So if you hold this staff, George, just for a second, what starts to happen, I'm going to demonstrate on this radio frequency meter that you are actually part of the antenna, which is expanding your actual aura. The staff of Moses, according to the ancient Kabbalah, it comes from the Garden of Eden.
Is this what Moses used, David, to part the Red Sea?
See, exactly. If the pyramid was a crystal oscillator generating frequencies, and the staff is proportional to the arc, and the arc is proportional to the staff, then the staff holder becomes more powerful.
Let's look at the tie-in between the staff of Moses and the Ark of the Covenant. Well, welcome to this edition of Beyond Belief, and we've got a great program in store for you today. Our special guest is someone who's been on our radio program quite often, David 𝗪𝗓𝗧. David is a mystic, but he's a producer, he's a director, he investigates a lot of the unknown. David, welcome to Beyond Belief.
It's great to be here in person with you, George.
Finally, after how many shows? Radio shows?
30, 33, 35.
You have brought us something kind of intriguing, which we're going to talk about in just a second. It's what you call the staff of Moses, basically.
The staff of Moses, Isis, and all of the prophets coming forward to Jesus actually being a staff holder, the 12 disciples being staff holders, then going forward to Merlin and the 12 knights of the Round Table, their staffs become swords. But the secret is in the length and the frequency of the staff.
This is made out of metal.
This is made out of brass, which is probably the staff of Moses, according to the ancient Kabbalah. It comes from the Garden of Eden, and God creates it on the 6th day of the creation in their mythology.
All right.
And then it goes through the prophets. From Enoch would have been the first prophet who was taken in a whirlwind and was actually taken aboard a crystal spaceship where he meets God, you know, the God of the ancient Hebrews. So God creates the staff and gives it to him, and then it goes through Abraham, it goes to Isaac, goes to Joseph, the Joseph of ancient
They just
Egypt.
handed it down to each other?
And they always had 12 staffs for the 12 tribe members. And the staff lays in the Ark of the Covenant, which is the secret to its power, how it gets recharged, and how it acts as a distributed antenna to keep all of the 12 in constant communication with each other and with God.
So I always thought the staff was just a piece of wood. It was not, I guess.
It actually contained 10 sapphires. 10 sapphires, like this would be the head of the staff here. And this actually has 10 sapphires. You can hold that in your hand, right? You can see it on the other side, the 10 sapphires on the top. And the sapphires, what's interesting about sapphires is NASA uses lab-grown sapphires and rubies for masers. And what a maser does is it benefits radio astronomy because it purifies the bands of microwaves for radio astronomy. So it's interesting when you attach sapphires and gems to an antenna. But we think of it more of as a royalty symbol when actually it's an antenna.
Well, let's look at your explanation of the staff as an antenna.
We are exploring a new theory that the staff of Moses, Aaron, Jesus, Muhammad, Merlin, and Arthur, as well as divine feminine prophetesses such as Isis, Sarah, Mary Magdalene, and more, that their staffs were used as an electrical antenna designed to amplify the electricity of the human nervous system into a divine radio signal, telepathy to God.
Doing a simple experiment, when we get a weak signal on the radio and we place our hands on the antenna, the signal mysteriously improves. This is scientific proof that we are likened to an antenna that receives messages from the beyond.
It was proven by German physicist Fritz Albert Popp that the human DNA transmits and receives radio waves. This proves the hypothesis that humans can interface with radio frequency antennas. For the staff of legends we are speaking of to be an actual antenna,
we have to know its length. With the exact length, we can determine the radio frequency of the gods. This is because the height of an antenna, using positive and negative charge today, is equal to half a wavelength. The length of the antenna or staff times 2 equals a full wavelength. The frequency of an antenna is calculated with a simple formula. The speed of light in inches divided by the full wavelength of the antenna. So if we know the length of the staff of Moses and the other legends in inches, we can know the frequency they used to talk to God. What a great revelation this could be.
David, did Moses know the power of the staff, or was he just using it?
Well, the way it starts with the prophets is they herd the sheep and they bond with it first. So when you start, if I hold this, and this staff here is plugged in.
And that's pretty heavy too, by the way.
It's pretty heavy, so you can
earlier.
imagine him walking around with this. Because Moses' staff, according to legend, had the 10 sapphires, and it would probably be a conductor like brass.
Okay.
Because the Egyptians had brass, or it could have been even gold. Because gold is actually the best conductor.
Right.
Right. So as soon as I hold this staff, because I have electricity in my nervous system, we can measure voltage and current on our fingertips and our earlobes. And any electrical system, such as the human body is, that has resistance, means it has an aura. It means it has a magnetic field. So scientists who say that the human body doesn't have an aura, I mean, a lot of them tell me this because I worked with classical physicists.
They're wrong.
You're wrong, because if you have resistance, you have an aura. So if you hold this staff, George, just for a second, what starts to happen, I'm going to demonstrate on this radio frequency meter that you are actually, you can hear the alarm on this thing go off. I'll turn the volume up.
I'm going to hold it?
But no, you can't hold it because you'll become part of the circuit.
All right.
You see, the meter, even on your hands here, is going crazy. Now, if you let go of the staff, and then we put the meter near you, it's not doing anything. The needle is going to nowhere.
Okay.
So as soon as you plug into a charged staff, you are now part of the antenna, which is expanding your actual aura. So your aura is getting bigger, which means your telepathy is increasing. But because we know that this staff, because it's a monopole staff, times 4, the speed of light in inches divided by this in inches, if you know the correct inches for the staff of Moses, then you have the frequency that Moses and the prophets used to communicate with God. And possibly God is in what the prophets tell us from Ezekiel and the giant wheels, and what the book of Enoch tells us is God was traveling in this big crystal spaceship, right?
Right.
So
We're
you
assuming
need to
that
communicate.
We're dealing with an extraterrestrial here, right?
Beyond Earth, right? A God that is above and observing the earth from above. So right now I have the sacred frequency of the pyramid capstone base going through your body right now. And so what's happening is, if you take the capstone of the Great Pyramid, the unfinished platform, it's 572 point something inches times 4 sides, and the theory that the pyramid is a giant crystal oscillator generating electromagnetic signals.
Basically.
What's that?
A power plant.
A power plant to generate frequencies, not to light a light bulb. What people call the Dendera light bulb, I believe, was an inductor transmitter. So it has a cord.
Okay.
The Dendera light bulb has a cord, and it has these giant humans, gods, holding the wand. What I believe the Dendera is an actual wand. And you see these small humans holding hands in kind of ceremony underneath it, right? And what that means is, if this was a giant light bulb, they would all be blinded, right?
That bright.
It would be too bright. So what I believe they're doing is they're doing exactly what I'm doing to you right now, is they're inducting sacred frequencies into the recipients to activate the kundalini of their own spiritual antenna.
Now, is this what Moses used, David, to part the Red Sea?
See, exactly. So what I'm saying in this thesis is, because the staff is We know in Hebrews 9:4 in the Bible that the staff lay inside the Ark of the Covenant. And we know in Numbers 17 in the books of Moses that the staff was proportional to the Ark. So if we know the length of the Ark, we know the length of the staff.
It fit right in there.
It would fit right in there, but it would mean it's the same frequency as the Ark of the Covenant. And this is a great, great secret here, because if the Ark of the Covenant was theoretically an electrical capacitor, and it belonged inside of the Great Pyramid, which I can fulfill and prove, then it acted as the charge in the pyramid, in the king's chamber, to activate the electrons to spin in square waves all the way up and down the pyramid.
Without the staff.
But no, the staffs were inside the Ark, because that was the charge.
If you didn't have the staff there, what would happen?
Then you would have no charge in the Ark.
Nothing.
You see,
So you need this.
the theory is if you have the stones, the tablets in the Ark, that if they were made of a radioactive granite like you find in Egypt,
Right.
they would emit an ionizing radiation, and the radiation would get trapped in the Ark. And therefore the Ark would have a certain amount of power. But with the rods, with the 12 staffs of Moses, Aaron, and
Like this.
like this, with the sapphires, then it would the Ark of the Covenant would be so powerful, but so would the staffs. But they operate at the same frequency. So that means if there's two staffs, if I have a staff, the same wavelength size as yours,
Right.
then we are in radio communication with each other. Because the way an antenna works is any two oscillators, whether they're crystal oscillators or they're antennas at the same wavelength, therefore the same height, they are in instant communication with each other.
Now, when you say in communication with each other, what do you mean by that?
Radio
Because-
communication. Because your spine is calcium, and calcium is a metal, so therefore it's a conductor. Your spine is an antenna, but you're now interfacing with a more powerful antenna that is actually drawing off of all of the pyramid power. Now remember Tesla, who is the father of the Tesla coil,
Right.
and that the staff of Moses had, or of Aaron, and Aaron had the serpent, the coil. The serpent is really the symbol of the coil.
Do some people have higher readings than others?
Probably because of a combination of what you're made of, like what your body's actually made of, the chemistry in your body, and also your state of spiritual development, right? So what I'm saying is, when Tesla built the Wardenclyffe Tower in Long Island, New York, he was going to transmit power wirelessly via antenna receivers
To the world.
to the world. So if the pyramid was a crystal oscillator generating frequencies, and the staff is proportional to the Ark, and the Ark is proportional to the staff, then the staff holder becomes more powerful because their body electric receives the pyramid power. So it's funny in Christianity that there's no knowledge other than the earliest Christian art showing Jesus with the bakal isu, the staff. But most Christians don't equate Jesus to being a staff holder, but he is. And Jesus is, it's interesting because his antenna height, if you take the Shroud of Turin, we know the height of Jesus.
Right.
And the shroud
Assuming
is,
it's him, and it probably is.
assuming it's him, and it's now been authenticated to be cloth from the time period of Christ, he's exactly the same height as me, about 72 inches and a smidgen higher. The number 72 is also very, very significant. And that is that there were 72 lesser disciples than Christ. And if we go back to the Old Testament, the 72 names of God in the ancient Kabbalah and in the ancient Hebrew, the number 72 is very mystical. So that means the height of your body and your spine is your staff. I mean, I wrote a book with my wife called God's Great Pyramid.
Right.
And the mathematics, when we get to the simple measurement of the inch and the royal cubit inch, and we perfect that, what we find is that human language is like up here. And we will say the name of God like the ancient Hebrews would say. You can't say it because there's no vowels, but you would say the Yahweh.
Yahweh.
And then the First Nations would call it Takashla. See, it has a similar abruptness and vibration. But we would say you must have a different God because we're using a different word. But underneath word is tone and pitch. And underneath tone and pitch is the numerical frequency that produces the tone and the pitch. So when I took measurements using the true royal cubit inch of the Holy of Holies, the cube in Solomon's temple, where the Ark of the Covenant is stored, where the staffs are laying inside, the number I got using the most repeatable and reliable 20.605 inches per royal cubit, the Holy of Holies, comes to 34.34 feet.
Let's look at the tie-in between the staff of Moses and the Ark of the Covenant.
With the ark at 51.5125 inches and the staff at 51.5125 inches and Noah's Ark at 515.125 feet, we know they operate at the same wavelength and frequency. That means they are in communication with the Great Pyramid. Could they be drawing off the pyramid's power? Does the staff holder gain access to all of that power?
David, how would they figure this out thousands of years ago?
Well, the master architect is obviously God, because what we see happen, first of all, the Great Pyramid of Egypt is not Egyptian. Not a single hieroglyph or inscription was found inside.
Don't tell 𝗪𝗓𝗦𝗧 that.
I know. Exactly. And my theory is, if you go to the tone level of language and then you go to the frequency level of language, and frequency is a wavelength, the Holy of Holies of Israel in Solomon's temple, the wavelength, if you take the 20.605 royal cubit inch, which appears in 14 places in the Great Pyramid, it's repeatable and reliable, whereas all the other cubit measurements are not. We know in the book of Ezekiel, when the angel appears with the staff to Ezekiel, coming out of the giant, wheels within wheels spacecraft.
They had one too, didn't they?
He says a cubit is a cubit and a handbreadth. So that's elbow to fingertip plus a handbreadth, is a symbol, because everybody's is different, right?
Right.
But that makes a royal cubit. But the Bible doesn't call it a royal cubit. So most Hebrew scholars go wrong and use the old 18-inch cubit. And in fact, that now there's a movement to build the new temple, Ezekiel's temple, and they're going to use the 18-inch cubit when the angel said, no, it's a cubit and a handbreadth.
Which is what, the 15-inch?
Which is 20.605 inches per cubit, because in the Great Pyramid, according to Peter Lemenzuri's book, The Great Pyramid Decoded, in 14 places, the 4121 inches, is 2 royal cubits. And because that's consistent, whereas the Egyptian measuring rods range between 20.6 and 20.8 plus inches, meaning the Egyptians didn't know it exactly themselves because they didn't invent it. The reasons their rulers varied is they were studying the Great Pyramid's measurements to try to find out what was a true cubit.
Why is the length so important?
The length is so important because if you get the length wrong, the Holy of Holies, which measures to 412.1 inches, the most common measurement in the Great Pyramid is the 4121. So there's the Holy of Holies at 20 royal cubits by 20 cubits by 20 cubits. That's 412.1 inches. That ties the Holy of Holies to the Great Pyramid math, right? So the reason it has to be exact is the underlying number always produces two codes, either the 4121 or the 5125. So the pyramid slope angle is 51 degrees, 51 minutes, 25 seconds. Now, the Ark of the Covenant and the staff, we know from the book of Hebrews 9:4, are the same length. So therefore, they're the same frequency. So the length is 2.5 cubits times 20.605 inches is pyramid number, 5151.
All right, let's assume you're there during this time period.
Yeah.
You have a staff. What do you do with it?
You train with it. Your nervous system, as you hold it, as you're herding sheep, you slowly start to calibrate at the frequency that the staff antenna represents. And at that frequency, once you master it, once your nervous system masters it, you are now going to receive divine communication.
How does that come to you?
It comes to you, when you say telepathic, we now know, because Fritz Albert Popper.
For example, when Moses got the 10 Commandments, did he get it this way?
Well, he goes.
Did he have the staff then?
He always had the staff. He had the staff when he traveled with his family. It says in the old books of Moses that Moses always traveled with the staff. So it's kind of like you get on the donkey and you get the family and you never forget the staff.
Okay.
Just like Jesus says in Mark 6, you don't forget your staff, because that keeps you in that calibrated communication state. So that when Moses then goes up onto the Sinai, he's using his antenna to call down God onto the Sinai. And then God knows his position. Now, the staff is emitting the frequency so that we could then in the future, if I could go near the Ark of the Covenant, where it's hidden today, and I emit the correct frequency through the staff, that wavelength will fit inside of the Ark and switch it on.
And do what?
I believe a pillar of light would come out of the sky, because that's what the Bible tells us when the Ark was traveling. The pillar of light came out of the sky, and it would identify the Ark's position.
If you like this video and you want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out the next video on our channel.